Hey y'all, welcome to Craftable Things. I'm Patrice, and today we are going to just dive right into today's tutorial where you will be making some of the cutest teacher coasters. I'm headed back into the classroom. I love making these for myself, but I also love making these for some of my fellow teachers. So let's get started. Alright guys, so for today's project we are going to be using some epoxy. This is a two-part epoxy. It's a quick coat, so it should take 4 to 5 hours for it to cure and be tack free. So we're going to be using this. I also have some glitter, and this is just to create the background so that it can look like a composition notebook. So we're going to be using this glitter. I have a few other items that will go inside of the coaster. We have these paper clips, and they're pretty small paper clips because I don't want anything overly large to be inside of the coaster mold. And I also have these pencil erasers. We also have these binder clips that I have, and these are the mini binder clips. I purchased some of these golf pencils, and I just want to make sure I don't flip it over. And they're really small. I like these because they have hearts on them. Now there's different pencils you can buy, but I have a few different types, but I'm going to use this particular pencil with our project today. Of course we need the silicone mold, and so I got this off of Amazon. And you can make 6 coasters with one of the molds. And I also have some crayons that we could place inside. So let's get ready and begin. So we're going to be doing this in some layers. So to protect your surface, I would recommend getting a silicone mat like this. This is the silicone mat because the epoxy cleans off of this really nicely. The first thing we need to do is start to mix our epoxy, and we are using the quick coat epoxy, so you have to work really fast when you're working with this epoxy. If you're working with the regular epoxy, you don't have to move as quickly as you have to move with this one. However, this will begin to cure very fast. So you want to make sure that you're mixing equal parts, meaning if you're going to be mixing 2 ounces of part A, you need to mix 2 ounces of part B, and then you want to stir it very slowly. So that's what I'm doing. I'm using these silicone measuring cups to get this done because these clean really easily. So I love to use them, but make sure that you're mixing equal parts of both side A and part B. And of course you want to stir so slowly to avoid having any bubbles. So now we're going to just mix this together, and this can take, you want to do this for 4 to 5 minutes, but you want to make sure that you mix it really good. Alright guys, so now we're going to get ready to mix some of the epoxy with a little bit of glitter, and so I'm just going to pour this into this measuring cup. And if you have bubbles, you want to make sure you stir it pretty slowly. You don't really want bubbles, but if you get bubbles, make sure you have like a heat gun that will pop the bubbles for you. And I like to kind of do everything on top of my silicone mat because that will definitely make sure that I don't get any of this epoxy on the table. Alright, so we're going to be using some of this glitter. And I got this glitter because it's black and white glitter, and it gives the effect of a composition notebook. Alright, and so I'm just going to pour some of this in here, and I'm going to pour a nice generous amount because I actually want that bottom to really be coated with the glitter and the epoxy. So once I have it all in, I'm going to mix it, and then I'll see if I need to add any more of the glitter. Alright, I think it's thick enough for me. Alright, so I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to bring our molds, and so I'm going to pour this into the first mold. And I've stirred it up, And I really just want a nice thin layer first. And the reason why I want a thin layer is because I'm going to be placing all of the crayons, the pencils, and I don't want that to really, I need enough space to put it in. Okay, so I'm just going to move it around a little bit and help it out. That is pretty thick. And so then I'm going to also pour some here because I want to make another. I just need to pour enough here. All right, that's good. And then I'm going to pour a little more into here. So next I'm going to get my little mini heat gun and pop some of these bubbles. I'm using my heat gun. However, you can also use a lighter to pop some of those bubbles. You definitely want to make sure you get as many of those bubbles popped because they will be seen in the final product. So this is a very important step just to make sure that you don't have lots of bubbles. While this is curing, I'm just going to go into Creative Fabrica and locate some labels and images that I might want to use on my coasters. And I'm just pulling some composition notebook labels as well as lined paper just to give this a real school appeal. So once I have all that downloaded, I headed into Adobe Illustrator. You can do this inside of Canva, Silhouette Studio. All I'm doing now is resizing the labels so that they will fit nicely onto the coaster. So whatever size coaster you're using, just make sure you size it so that you'll know what size your labels should be. And I'm just designing two different types of images. I want the composition notebook, and then I also want one to be lined paper. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to head over into Cricut Design Space and just print these out as stickers. Okay, this makes it so much easier just to go ahead and place it as opposed to trying to use vinyl to get this done. So I did a print and cut, printed out my labels, and this is what we have. The Cricut cut it, and it did not take much time to get this done at all. Everything printed out nicely. I printed this using my Epson EcoTank 15,000. Alright guys, so now I have my labels printed and I am just going to place these in. And these are just going to stick right on top. Now you can place some acrylic sealer on top if that's what you would like, but I am just going to place it just like this. Might have made it a little bit too wide, but it's okay. So now I'm just going to continue placing the labels on top of the base of the coasters, and once I'm done with that, I'm going to gather all of the different trinkets that I want to place inside of them. And I'm going to start with the pencil and also just place the paper clips and the binder clip just around however I like. It doesn't have to be in any specific order. Since I'm using a name, I want to make sure that the name is seen on the coaster. So I'm trying to place that pencil where it needs to be. If you notice, as I placed the epoxy in, the pencil started moving. So this method of placing the items on the coaster doesn't necessarily work. And y'all, I thought that it would stay down and I let it cure, and it did not stay down at all. It shifted and caused more bubbles. Alright guys, so here is what we have so far, and this one's set for 4 hours, and I'm glad that I didn't place the epoxy in the other two to cover it, because if you notice here, I have a bubble, the pencil lifted up a little bit, and so it's kind of sticking up a little bit on top, and I have this bubble here. So I kind of popped the bubble as much as possible so that I could pour some of the epoxy inside, because I'm going to do one more layer at the top, and hopefully this layer will cover the top of the pencil and this won't be a wasted project. Alright, and so I'm going to do the same thing for here, but what I do have is I have some B7000 that I'm going to just place a little bit on the bottom because I want to make sure that this sticks to the bottom. I don't want it to lift up like how it did on the other one. So I'm just going to place it right here. And then I'm also going to do it for the crayon too, because I'm just imagining that the crayon will do the same thing. So I'm just going to put some glue here. And we're going to press this down. And I just want it to stick because I don't want it to lift up. All right. And then our eraser didn't really pop up here. It's down. But I am going to just go ahead and cut a little bit out from the bottom, just so that we can kind of avoid having it float around or float up. And we just have it like that. I'm trying to think if I want to. Okay. So we may do it like that this time. And then we have our paper clips, our tiny paper clips. All right. So if you want to glue this down, I could go ahead and just glue it down a little bit. Why not? And then I may put another set of paper clips. Alright guys, so now I'm just going to add more epoxy, and there are so many bubbles inside of this epoxy because I stirred it way too quickly. So please make sure that you stir slowly. You don't want to cause the bubbles, okay? Now I have another batch of epoxy, and I'm now pouring it into the rest of the molds. And as you all see, I don't have any issues with any of the articles or items inside of those coasters floating to the top, and that's what you want. So definitely glue your materials down inside of the coaster. All right, so now I'm just going to get my heat gun, and I'm going to pop any of the bubbles that I see, and I'm probably overdoing it. And what I want you guys to be careful when you're using a heat gun or a lighter, just make sure that you don't heat your epoxy up too much. Right now I'm overheating it, and you'll be able to see in the finished product what happens. That wax starts to melt. The wax of the crayon starts to melt, so don't overheat. But y'all, look how this looks. I love this glitter. I love how that looks just like a composition notebook, and it looks pretty good. I don't like the fact that it floated up. However, it is still fine. It still looks okay. All right, and here is the other coaster, and that looks good on the back. You can put another label on the back, or maybe you could put a cushion on the back, so you know, just so that nobody sees the back of it. But I love how these came out. They look really good. And this is the coaster where I melted the wax, and all I did was scrape that wax off because it did seep out of the actual coaster. I waxed it and sanded it down and just applied another coat of epoxy on it, and I put a sticker on top too, and it looks just fine. But I love how these came out, y'all. These are super nice. All right, y'all, we're all done making these coasters, and they're super easy to make. You may not want to use the quick set epoxy. You may want to use the regular epoxy. That will take about 24 hours depending on how many layers you're going to be using. It may even take more time than that, just so that everything can set how you want it to set. And I definitely recommend using some glue to glue down your pencil and your crayon. You will get a better coaster doing it that way, and you'll reduce your materials from floating up to the top of that resin and causing even more bubbles. But I love how these came out. I love this one that we used the different pieces, the paper clips and everything in, but y'all, I think honestly that this one is my favorite. We didn't use any of the extra pencils or anything like that. Just a very nice, simple coaster, and I love it. This one is my favorite. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to head over to Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok and join the Craftable Things communities there as well. But that's going to be it for today, y'all. Thank you all so very much for watching. Until next time.